Good morning. Thank you.
And let's silence our cell phones, please, everybody. Thank you so much. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Heavenly Father, I thank you that we can gather together today here. Lord, this is our city, Bonita Springs. Lord, it has a small town charm with a big, bright future. And these are the leaders you've chosen. So God, I pray a blessing over this meeting. I ask God that you give them wisdom and knowledge, understanding and good judgment, that they can work together in unity to make our community what a blessing that it is. Bless all those who are traveling here to celebrate Christmas with us in our piece of paradise. And we thank you for all of this and ask it in your mighty name. Amen.
Amen.
'Tis the season to be jolly.
Thank you very much. Councilman Forbes, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Carumba. Here. Councilwoman Carr.
Here.
Mayor Simmons.
Here.
Councilman Gibson.
Present.
Councilman Forbes.
present.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here. We are going to start with public comment on agenda items. Members of the public that would like to speak, please come forward at this time. Morning, Kathy.
Good morning. For the record, Kathy McGrath. And I would like to interject first, happy holidays, no matter who you worship, where you go, have a good one. The only little bit I want to say is I noticed on the agenda under city manager's report is the Wonder Gardens possible restaurant. We've been waiting a long time. I don't know Randy Essick personally. I've met him. He's been here a long time, and I'm sure staff and you've got your board here have checked everything carefully. So I just hope you'll give it your full consideration because we're really looking forward to having a restaurant there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other members of the public that would like to speak, please come forward. Welcome.
Morning, happy holidays. Good morning. Thomas Hecker of the Everglades Wonder Gardens, here today to request your support for the Everglades Wonder Gardens to use the former cafe on the property as part of our facility going forward. The garden has successfully raised attendance to 75,000 visitors annually, up from 20,000 annually just a few years ago. Drawing on area residents and tourists to the revitalized historic downtown. In doing so, we are supporting neighboring shops, restaurants, and other businesses. The cafe parking is contiguous and currently being used by garden visitors. Without it, this attendance cannot be maintained or increased. The city of Bonita has invested greatly in improvements throughout the historic district. We are an important economic driver in downtown, and having the cafe and its associated parking positions us to continue leverage with those investments to increase Bonita's economic growth as a downtown's primary public attraction. Additionally, we are expanding our environmental education programs and believe the new space would be ideally suited for more educational programs and camps to be available in our community. This complements the Bonita Springs identity as the gateway to Crew and as a leader in helping our citizens and tourists to appreciate nature. The cafe has historically been part of the Everglades Wonder Gardens and part of the historical district. It would be suited to remain as such. It currently is decorated with a garden mural, which could be retained and used to strengthen the overall community character element that the Everglades Wonder Gardens provides to Old Bonita. As such, we believe the economic and community identity benefits of allowing the Everglades Wonder Gardens use of the cafe building provide the greatest benefit to the community and request your approval accordingly. Thank you for your time and consideration of our request.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here this morning. Other members of the public that would like to speak, please come forward at this time. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Jackie McCurdy. I'm a member of the board.
of the Wonder Gardens. Bonita Springs has really put on a very good program and a very good plan to make Old Bonita something of value. And we have done an awful lot towards that. Right across the street from us will be buildings that have restaurants all along the river. And restaurants could be very useful there. They will have ways to get out onto Old 41. The traffic on Old 41, as you know, is deadly. And to have a restaurant cafe is not the thing to have there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. Other members of the public that would like to speak, please come forward. Good morning. Welcome.
Good morning. Deborah Brandel. I'm the Vice President of the Everglades Wonder Gardens Board. And thank you for your time and consideration. I'd like to speak on behalf of the Everglades Wonder Gardens. The position that I would like to take is that I think that it would be best used as an environmental learning center for the community. We have summer camps, we have winter camps, we have families coming through. As Thomas had mentioned, we went from 20,000 visitors to 75,000 visitors. And if you ever pass by Old 41 and you pass by the Wonder Gardens, you will see that the parking lot is completely full, including the area around the former restaurant. The restaurant has not been successful in the past, and I don't believe that it would be successful in the future. I think it would be best used by the Wonder Gardens to teach children and to have landscaping certification meetings, and I think it's best served in the community to be part of the Wonder Gardens. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. Other members of the public that would like to speak, please come forward. Good morning. Welcome.
Good morning. I'm Beth Hagan, and I'm the treasurer of the Everglades Wonder Gardens, and I promise you I'll probably be this last speaker for the Wonder Gardens today. I'm also the person who, for the past 3 years, has been coordinating the development of environmental education at the Wonder Gardens. We've had several kinds of programs, but the one I just want to mention is one that the city of Bonita Springs has participated in for the last 3 years and will participate again in the upcoming year. That's the Florida Landscaping Expert Certification Program. It's a program for those who serve on landscaping committees in gated communities to better understand the specific needs of Florida landscaping compared to coming from up north. Every year we have a waiting list for this because we are constrained by having to squeeze 49 people into that little room that is to the left of the door. They put up with this, these wonderful residents, even though they're just about sitting on each other's laps, because the program is very valuable to them. I'm not certain that we would want to continue to squeeze people in there, so we either have an option of serving fewer people, or if we could get the building that we're talking about, we would have an actual space for a classroom to continue to have this program, now as I mentioned in its 4th year, as well as other programs that meet the needs of the residents of Bonita Springs who are adults who want to know more about landscaping and specifically the environmental issues of landscaping in today's very critical climate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other members of the public that would like to speak? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to the consent agenda. Council, what's your pleasure?
Move to approve. I'm going to keep them on the list, but I have 3 to talk about afterwards.
Let me see, okay. I want to, if we could, I'd like to pull E, and I'd like to pull J, just for further information and discussion.
Okay.
Were those 2 of your 3? No, okay.
We're going to be talking about 5.
Okay.
Mine are short, though.
All right, motion to approve the rest other than E or J? Is there a second? I'm sorry, probably said that wrong. Okay, there's been a motion to approve all except E and J for further discussion, and a second further discussion. Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Carumba?
Aye.
Councilwoman Carr? Mayor Simmons.
Aye.
Councilman Gibson.
Aye.
Councilman Forbes.
Arlene or Nicole, could we get some more information on item E, which is to reject the sole bid in RFB-19-21 Bonita Springs Community Park Baseball Complex? 1A, thank you.
Yes, Nicole Perino, Parks and Recreation Director for the record. We did receive only one bid on this project. We do think, in combination with the holidays and things like that, that it would be better suited to put it in combination with Phase 1B. 1B just wasn't ready, and we were working with Little League season because we're trying to do the least amount possible to disrupt that. 1B is set to begin in the end of May when Little League season is over. So that's why we're asking that they be combined later and be done all at one time. But we did go through the one bid we did receive, and the numbers were just too high.
Okay, bottom line,
Yep.
good work.
Yep.
Okay, I'm happy. Motion to approve, 1E and a second. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Carr.
Aye.
Mayor Simmons.
Aye.
Councilman Gibson.
Aye.
Councilman Forbes.
Out of town.
Out of town.
Councilwoman Caramba.
Aye.
And then there were 4.
Come back.
All right, item J, which is to approve a budget resolution to establish budgets for Hurricane Irma funding. Just would like to get a little more explanation on that, please.
I'm going to ask Finance
Ye-
Director Ray Wright to come forward.
Wonderful, thank you very much.
Good morning, Finance Director.
Good morning.
Right. We are still receiving some funding from the original submission for the hurricane damages. And this was the largest remaining portion that came in December, early December. So we still have about another 100,000 that we should be receiving under those expenses. And we'll be going over that more in our discussions later in the meeting under the budget portion as well.
Not to put you on the spot, but you have the numbers in front of you for the folks that might be watching at home or listening? Maybe on a podcast or something like that?
Okay. We are, based on the expenditures that we have to date, we are expecting to receive a total cash receipts from reimbursement, and that's both from FEMA and the state, of $7.8 million. And to date, we have collected $7.7 million.
Wonderful.
So,
Wow. Okay, great work, team.
thank you.
I'm happy.
And just to further explain, we needed this budget amendment for this fiscal year, FY 2020, since it came in on December 3rd and was outside of the window that we could accrue back to the prior year.
Wonderful, great work.
Thank you.
And for folks that, I guess just as a, for the last hurricane, when we had Irma, I did hear reports that Lee County was just getting back some of their money from the hurricanes from like 10 years earlier. So whatever our team has done, which as usual, they step up to the plate and then some, great work. So thank you for that explanation. Okay, I'm happy. Motion to approve? And a second. Okay, further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mayor Simmons.
Aye.
Councilman Gibson.
Aye.
Councilwoman Caramba.
Aye.
Councilwoman Carr.
Aye.
Great. Amy?
Okay, just a couple comments. On E, I think I got the wrong one. It's the one where we were appointing people to the various committees. And what struck me is every committee that we're appointing people to, there's openings. So I just would ask the staff to see if we can, I don't know what we can do about it, but I think maybe we should make an outreach to individual neighborhoods within the city, because it's really not good that so many, I can understand certain ones not having interest, but we need to do something about those citizens committees, that they have all those openings. So that's the only point I want to make there.
And Amy, not to interrupt, but would it make sense to put that out to our email list or
We can do an e-blast.
BTV 98? I don't, you know.
I think I thought that you were already doing that, but I would suggest that this is a little off point, but it may be relevant. We were supposed to get a specific contact with each contained neighborhood within the entire city, and we were approaching it from an emergency point of view. If there was a disaster, we wanted to have somebody who had stepped up and said, we'll take care of our neighborhood and you do your usual stuff, you know? I think that probably would be, if we do have that list, I thought we had a good part of that done, that we go and ask each neighborhood to go out to their residents and say, come on, would you do something for the city? These are things that are opening, and we're looking for applicants. You know, make a more personal thing. But it's really up to you to decide the process, but what we're doing is obviously not working. So we need an alternative, so I leave that up to the staff.
We've also previously done press releases with quotes from
Correct.
individuals from who are volunteer liaisons to talk about the committees to try to get some interest as well. We can do that as well.
And we can each ask people, I have somebody in the wings for arts in the public places,
And I think it's good that we all do that, but it's not just who we know, it's not our network, it's the city network that we have to open up our interest in and our stimulation to, I think. Because I do the same thing. I live in a 3,000 door community, so I can get anything in their thing, but it shouldn't just be Pelican Landing, it should be everybody. That's my opinion anyway. And I just want to comment on G, where we're having this memorandum of understanding with the Native Plant Society. I've been out there. I don't know if anybody happened to be out there, but I think that's a wonderful thing that the city has done, is to open up some lands to this organization where they have demonstration gardens, and I think that this is taking the next step. I know in my neighborhood community, there's a lot of interest in environmental issues, and they're always talking about native plants, and I'm afraid that the people on the outside they really don't know what they're talking about because they don't have the exposure to it. So I think having them do outreach and educate the various gated communities and the various neighborhoods is very good. So I'm very pleased to see this. So thank you for the staff effort. I know this didn't just happen now. I think you've been working on it for, what, a couple of years now, Matt, or
It's
more
been
than
a
more?
slow,
2 years?
yeah, few years
So it's
process.
like 2 or 3 years project, and it's nice to see it on the agenda there. And then, again, I just want to compliment the staff for L, because they continue to work on getting grants to do things where we're trying to connect our network of sidewalks and multi-use paths and everything. And again, that's just an example. These are small, relatively small places, but the more we do that, the more connectivity we'll have, and we'll fulfill our dreams. So thank you for continuing that. Thank you for asking for grants, and thank you for getting them. Okay.
More importantly, thanks for getting them, right, Amy?
Well, that's what I said.
Yeah, right, no, that's
But
right.
before we weren't even, I don't think we were even making the applications. Maybe I was wrong, but we were not as aggressive about making the applications. So the staff, again, and is it Ellie that does it?
Ellie,
Yes.
Yeah, she does those grant applications. They deserve compliments for that. Thank you.
No, that's great work, and Fred checks for typos, so it's a team effort, so no, great work.
Typos.
Council, any other comments on the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to proclamations and presentations, and I'm going to make just read. This is item A. It's a presentation by Dr. Michael Parsons with Florida Gulf Coast University, and an appointee by Governor Ron DeSantis, I might add, to the Florida Gulf Coast University Water School on the proposed water steward. This is Green Sheet 1912-410. And for folks that may be listening, I have had some feedback that it is nice to read these because they don't always necessarily know, even within the discussion. This one should be pretty apparent, but by way of background, I've been in discussions with Dr. Michael Parsons regarding the possibility of partnering with Florida Gulf Coast University to have a dedicated water steward provided through FGCU at the Vester Field Station here in Bonita Springs on Bonita Beach Road. The contract position would work for the city directly to conduct water sampling and respond to harmful algae blooms, HABs, should they occur. On a day-to-day basis, the water steward would conduct water quality sampling and monitoring activities for harmful algae, fish kills, and water quality concerns in the Imperial River, Oak Creek, and Spring Creek watersheds, as well as Estero Bay and Bonita Beach. In the event of an HAB, the position would assist in emergent response activities and provide technical assistance in responding to the public's concerns during the event. Funds in the amount of $83,780 are being requested to hire a full-time research lab technician at the Vester Field Station. Attached in the proposed scope of work and funding information, which includes the collection of samples, measuring water quality parameters, analyzing samples for nutrients and harmful algae blooms, the organization of efforts to clean up fish kills and remove dead or injured turtles, manatees, or sharks, and anything else, I might add. This also includes cleanup activities and for providing weekly water status updates to the city of Bonita Springs. So with that, I'd like to introduce Dr. Mike Parsons for a presentation, please. Good morning, welcome.
Good morning. Thank you very much for taking time out to hear what I have to say. So, as the mayor mentioned, this is a proposal basically to have a person who will basically have their finger on the pulse, if you will, of our waters, local waters. I think it's an important thing to do. We do have many gaps in terms of what we're looking at. We tend to respond to disaster rather than monitoring and preparing for it. We do know water quality is a big issue. The city of Bonita is already taking steps to reduce nitrogen inputs, for example. There are some impairment issues with dissolved oxygen and with bacteria. There's various steps being taken to reduce the nitrogen loadings into our system. And so it's a really opportune time to consider this. Not only will it be good for Bonita citizens, but also be good for tourism and good for businesses. It'll show that the city is actively doing something about it. While it seems like this position is, in my opinion, a no-brainer, they are hard to fund. And so that's why this request is being brought before the council and the mayor. I write a lot of grant proposals, but when we write grant proposals, it's for a specific research task. It's not simply monitoring and just keeping your hand on the pulse. So this is something that's a little unusual from the pure science realm. I do think it's a great opportunity to better link our activities at the Vester Field Station with the city of Bonita. We are in Bonita. I'm director of the Vester Field Station. We're on the water every single day. We had mullet dying last year with the red tide right outside of our docks, so we know it's right here in Bonita as well. We know it's down on the beaches. So I would just like you guys to consider this, and if you have any questions, I'm here to answer questions.
Great. Thank you, Doctor. Councilman Forbes?
Yeah, I support this. I wanted to make sure we're going to do one thing in the testing and then another suggestion. Can we, in case you're not doing it, can we also test for fecal matter and other things just in the nitrate loading? Because we, at that thing you had in here, we had what they call it the water keepers just saying it was really bad and all that, and hopefully be able to determine whether it's human or animal based. And then I think we have an effort with FGCU testing now. So are you going to marry your thing in with that, I hope?
Yes, definitely. So the other projects that are going on with Don Duke and Serge Thomas. And
so will we be able to do the fecal testing too in this?
We'll work with them, and the answer is yes. Okay. We will be able to do that.
Because that will obviously help our efforts on
everything.
Septic to sewer, right? Absolutely.
Yeah, I was lumping that kind of in with the bacterial impairments, but that would be part of it.
For us non-scientists, doctor, break that. The answer is yes.
Yes.
100%, okay.
Clear yes.
A clear yes? Okay, we're going to get it clearer. Mike?
I'm good.
You're good? Laura?
Yeah, I'd almost like to see this tabled because there are questions I have. Are we duplicating something that already exists? Can we piggyback off of another, group that's already doing it? Can we join in? Do we really have to hire another staff person? Arlene's meeting with our commissioner to be hopefully, and maybe we could get money from Lee County. And because if we keep just solving, Lee County's not going to give us any money. So I'd like to look into other ways of funding this and to see if indeed there's already somebody doing this and we could join in.
Is there anybody doing this that we know of, or?
I wouldn't, not to
Matt?
Not to the scope that this scope would would provide for it. We do some monitoring, but not to the broad range that the scope would address, and not with the continuity or the continuum. It's on a much less frequent basis and a much smaller scope. And I'm not aware of anyone else that is providing this level of service.
So this, oh, could I?
No, yeah,
oh,
no, absolutely, I'm sorry.
So this position would really help the team, like the effort that's going on?
It's a
to help
contract,
the
it would be a
And I'm sorry, Matt, you normally have a pretty loud voice, but if you could, yeah.
It would be a contract position, so it's not, we're not talking about adding a staff member with benefits. This is like hiring a mowing contract.
It's similar to having a consultant as well. So it would be, you do have some consulting funds in your current budget. You have about 50,000. You would have to do a budget transfer at the next meeting for the additional remaining funds needed.
Amy, and Lauren, I'm sorry, because I know Amy and then Fred.
I want to echo what Laura has said, because you could go down all these specific tasks and you say, yes, this is all wonderful that we should be doing it. But I think we need to take a higher level look at this proposal, because we are government light and we have to decide where to put our 85, what we can do with $85,000, even if it is for environmental issues. Lee County, I believe, set aside $600,000 to do some kind of water quality testing. And I think that Red Tide was a big part of that. I don't know where we fall in that, but they already are going out to that. And I think that I would ask the staff to integrate with Lee County to see if they could be involved with this, or if they could do something similar. That's my first suggestion. I also think that, that there is a different a government entity that is responsible for this kind of thing, and that is the Department of Environmental Protection and the Department of Health. And there's been a lot of criticism directed toward both those entities with the last go-around, where they didn't do what we had expected, and they said they're all going to pick it up, that they're going to do their job, which they didn't do the last time. So I don't think we should be doing their job for them. That's my personal opinion. And we do have this contract with FGCU for $37,000 to do the bacterial testing, and I think that that's the one that is most needy in Bonita Springs right now. So I would, what's being proposed here is mainly for nutrients. We already have a pretty active removal program, and I think we do test for nutrients in our estuaries, which I think is where you got to figure out where it's coming from. And I think it would be more helpful to do that than to figure out where it ends up. I think we need to know where it's coming from. So I think we should table this. We could explore it further, but I'm not going to vote in favor of this at this time.
Fred?
Yeah, I feel we should do this. I think, though, that we should approach the county. We've got a county commissioner, our county commissioner, that's running for re-election. He could get some money to add to this to make it better, or to supplement what we have. The other thing is, we voted in what some people call the water tax. To me, we can use some of those funds, I believe, could we not?
Yeah, sure.
So we did it to do things that we weren't doing before, and this is something we weren't doing before. And I will say this thing about fecal testing and all that is a matter of, it's urgent we get a handle on. So I support it.
Right. And certainly, no, there's certainly a difference of opinion here on, and obviously I brought this forward. I feel strongly and stand strongly in favor of this. Have we reached out to the county or others at the anywhere to discuss this or talk through this, Matt?
Not this particular issue, but the $600,000 that Councilwoman Carumba mentioned, I have spoken directly with county staff. It is a contract with Florida Atlantic, I believe, with Dr. LaPointe. It is more specific to septic tank conversion in a specific location, and it is not here in Bonita Springs. As you know or may know, we're mostly on sanitary sewer, but they're grappling with some issues, I believe, in the Caloosahatchee Basin. It's similar to the testing that we're doing with FGCU. I think it's just more of a continuation and more of a robust study for an area where they have a lot of septic systems.
Right. No, and I've been around a lot of conversations on this, Shirley, and What can you say? Everybody's in favor of clean water until it comes time to discuss who pays for it. Everybody's for nitrogen reduction until it's time to decide who pays for it. We're taking the lead in our nitrogen reduction. There have been some great meetings around the state. Bonita Springs is certainly a leader in nitrogen reduction because of Matt and his team and other efforts. I view this as another way of being a leader, of following. We can continue to follow and complain, or we can lead. And I look at this as a way of leading our community, and happy to work through any details that are questions that people may have. And obviously, I stand in strong support. Fred, you had another comment?
I think we ought to broaden our asking and talk to our good friend Chauncey Goss, because this falls under the umbrella that they have some interest in too. So I think we might get a little, we're not looking at a lot of money. I mean, if they gave us 25 grand, that would be helpful. County 25 and it's almost 50-50 or something like that.
So can we table it and the staff explore doing that?
Well, first, if you were to move forward with a proposal, we do need to bring back a contract for services between FGCU and the city, so that we would need to bring that back at the meeting in January. In the interim, staff can reach out to the Water Management District and county staff, but it might be helpful to select a liaison from the council to do outreach to the elected and appointeds as well from those boards for the request as well.
But if we move it forward, they're going to say, well, you're already going to do it. Why should we help out? You've decided to do it. So deal with it.
Well, we still need to bring back a contract. So if you.
But even if we table it?
No, if you table it.
But if
What happens if we table it?
But we won't have a presentation here. There's no proposal in front of you, so you're not really tabling anything. I mean,
We're working out the questions and talking through
right,
the
so
issues
something
as opposed to tabling
something would be coming back to you.
Well, isn't there going, well, all right. Wait for a motion to be
Even if
made?
this is a contract, I mean, once you go down this path, it's likely that it will be a continual annual contract. So we have to think about it in that vein. So I think it'd be worthwhile to explore whether these other entities that clearly have the responsibility for this, they have the scientific departments that can figure out what's going on much better than we do. We don't have that expertise within our staff. I think we should figure out a better way of funding this if this is what we want to do in the future. And I recommend that that's what the staff pursue. And in the meantime, we want to work on a contract. It's pretty obvious what the contract's going to say. It's going to say all this stuff that's in here, and the price is even in here. So I really think we need to ask other people whose responsibility is to do this to step up. That's where I would like to see the activity.
So the direction may be to say, based on Councilwoman Carr and Carumba's comments, is to, and yourself, Mr. Mayor, is to step back, look at this holistically before bringing anything back, and see if there's other ways to combine this with partnership or other funding efforts, something along those lines.
And what is the Department of Health doing? What is the Department of Environmental Protection? They said they were going to step up on just this project. And I would like to go back to Lee County. I know you said that they were focusing on the septic systems, but I thought when it was at least announced in the paper, maybe it was incorrectly reported, but it was more broad-based. You know, I think that they were...
Only relay to you the phone conversation I had with...
They were going to focus on red tide, and that was the point. So I think we should ask them if there is some help for us in this, just because our septic systems have already been taken care of, we have other issues.
And Commissioner Sandelli might be able to make a phone call and
So-
move it up and put the pressure on Lee County and the
Right.
departments of health.
And I do think that, you know, as a city, we have to make up our mind what we are. You know, if we're government light, what does that mean? Sort of a philosophical discussion. And when we talk to budget, we're going to be talking about that.
Okay, council? Fred, did you have another comment?
No, I would only add that in the whole state of Florida, the number one priority with Florida League of Cities is water quality. And then to some lesser degree, water quantity. And so I think this is in order. I think if we move cautiously on this, which is okay, even if we approved it to go into developing the contract, we have to approve the contract, and that gives us time to talk to Chauncey Goss, Sandelli. We can talk to somebody in health, but I can tell you the health department is strapped for labor. If you went to that water workshop that you guys had, the problem is they don't have enough people to go out and patrol and do all this testing and all that. So I think they would be willing to work with us and be happy to be part of it, but whatever.
Okay.
I will
Counsel?
add, I agree with what Laura said. I think if we talk to these people, we surely can, somebody will come up with some money.
Well, certainly happy to talk with some folks and do some outreach, or however we want that. You said a council liaison?
I think it'd be helpful for us to work with a council liaison for outreach to the elected board of Lee County as well as the appointed board of the Water Management District.
And bring this back in January.
We could report back on the conversations we've had with the scope.
Which, right, I mean,
Given,
despite the holidays, continue on.
We can reach out in January, worst case scenario, if it's difficult to get with people's schedules, the first meeting in February.
Okay. Is there, I mean, I'm happy to be that advocate to do the outreach. I brought this forward, so I'm certainly happy to have those conversations unless there's any objection.
in favor.
Okay. Great. We'll bring this back in January. Okay, sir? Thank you very much, Dr. Parsons. Okay, what do we have next? We have mayor and council member items. No, I just brought that up. Second reading of the following ordinances.
All right.
Sorry.
Oh, we
did-
skipped
we did
an
mayor and
item,
council.
Mr. Mayor.
Mayor, I'm sorry.
Yeah, mayor and council member. I'm sorry, I'm looking at that. Discussions regarding request from Bonita Grand LLC for the city to provide a revised letter acknowledging FEMA's letter of map revision, green sheet 1912-409.
Yes. Mayor, if you'd like, I can introduce and then have Derek also help as well.
Please.
Back in 2017, after Hurricane Irma, City Council had a lengthy discussion regarding concerns of FEMA letters of map revision. And at that time, the council created a form letter specifically that they asked community development to provide when those requests came forward. The mayor has been asked in an individual meeting to consider some changes to that letter in hopes that it's a letter.
No, go ahead. So the council adopted a standard letter which we send out to FEMA upon, and has been sent to FEMA. We copy on every request for a LOMAR or a letter of map revision. A copy of that letter from the city council basically says, due to what we've seen in Hurricane Irma, we request that we're not going to sign off on any letter of map revision that comes to the city until FEMA goes forward and revises their maps as a whole, taking into account what occurred in Irma. Whenever we receive a letter of map revision request, which is the right of any property owner who has on-site data to request of FEMA to get their map changed, we submit a copy of our letter along with an acknowledgement that we've received the request from FEMA, but we are not signing off on the local authorization. This particular applicant, I'll ask them to come up and just speak a second and speak, has requested a change in the form, not of our letter, that's what I want to clarify, but of our acknowledgement letter that we send to FEMA, because FEMA wants to be sure that when FEMA makes that change, if they make that change, that the city is going to respect what FEMA's decision is. Of course, we have not ever alleged that we're not going to respect their decision, we have just indicated that we're not going to do any local sign-offs on any map revisions in the meantime. So in your packet, the last page of the exhibits is the letter that we send to FEMA that was signed back in 2017. And the page immediately preceding that is our standard acknowledgement form, which was not approved by council, it's just what staff sends along, and some revisions requested by the applicant in this case and FEMA. Now, part of what the applicant will tell you is that their particular map revision differs from a standard letter of map revision, and I'll ask them to come up now, or their representative come up and speak on that item.
Okay. Good morning, welcome.
Good morning. For the record, Elizabeth Fountain, PE Vice President of J.R. Evans Engineering, and we represent the applicant with this letter of map correction. Basically, in the supporting documentation with the green sheet provided, we explain what the map correction involves. Basically, even though the current FEMA maps are dated from 2008, they did not include an update to the detailed hydraulic or hydrologic study for that portion of the Imperial River and Kill Canal. So that was realized when we were taking a look at this area of the flood mapping, and we actually developed the data collection and made sure that the correction included the actual physical conditions of this area. The Kill Canal is basically taken over as the main conveyance of the remnant historic part of the Imperial River, so it carries most of that flow coming from the east. So the update basically implements those corrections to the modeling and the mapping and creates a more detailed, accurate map of that portion of the Imperial River watershed. FEMA has completed their technical review and provided their acceptance of the analysis, and they've asked for a revised acknowledgement letter from the city to make sure that y'all are going to be acceptable to their determination.
Great. Thank you very much. Good morning, welcome.
Good morning. Francesca Pasadoma. I also represent the applicant. In non-engineering jargon, just to help you out, there was a mistake and oversight by FEMA when it did its general updates. We went in and with J.R. Evans Engineering actually found it, caught it, brought it to FEMA. FEMA just requires that the city acknowledge that they will be fixing the mistake and that the city will accept FEMA's determination. Your current acknowledgement letter merely says, we received the revision. So this will be at council's discretion on a case-by-case basis, how you want to modify your acknowledgement letter. That's completely within your discretion on a case-by-case basis. For our particular case, it's a mistake. It was a mistake. We want to correct the mistake. FEMA has agreed, and FEMA is just requesting the language that is in your packets today for this specific letter.
It is the case that FEMA did not agree. They accepted your analysis, and they haven't said, yes, you're correct, and we're going to change it and be compatible with you. Isn't that what they just said? We accept your analysis, but does that mean that they agree that they're going to change the map in the future? Don't they have to say we're going to incorporate this with our future map? Did they say something along those lines?
The communication we've received is that they've...
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Sorry. The communication we've received is that they've accepted the analysis and the map updates and are ready to move forward with the determination documents once they receive the city's...
What are determination documents?
So at the completion of the letter of map change, FEMA will issue what they call determination documents, and it's basically their official approval and issuance of the map change, and it includes a portion of the revised map. In order for them they want to move forward with those documents, they're asking for the updated acknowledgement from the city.
In English, it is the FEMA has at least given indication that they accept the analysis, but they're not making any promises on the final determination until everything comes in. The concern from what the changes that are requesting an acknowledgement form is the reviewers at FEMA who see our letter, they want to be sure that whatever FEMA makes its determination, the city's not going to not accept that determination. So they're asking to say, you know, we understand you're not signing the form, we're saying we're not signing your form, your local authorization form, but whatever determination we make, it's going to be binding on the city, and we want to know that you understand that.
Thank you.
Why, I mean, do we have a power to not accept their, I mean, what is this, is this all legal gobbledygook that we're talking about?
I think it's probably more bureaucratic CYA than.
Ooh, bureaucratic stuff. Ooh.
Just a matter of curiosity, why is this important to you? I mean, what difference does it make? Why don't you just wait? You know, is this something in your development that you need to have this done?
I think as Mr. Rooney mentioned, every property owner has the right to.
Yes, I
do
understand
these.
that.
If I can interject,
Sure.
the impact on this oversight is significant. We're talking 12 to 15 acres of developable area.
So now you can apply your development into an area that would be prohibited because of the old maps, is that correct?
Because of an oversight. This
Right.
isn't even new data
Yeah,
we're talking about.
I understand.
Okay, just want to make
I
the
just want to
record
understand what we're talking about here.
Sure.
Okay.
You good, Amy, for now?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay, no, for now. More questions? Fred?
Okay, first of all, you all can sit down if you don't mind.
clear. Oh, sure.
Bring up my PowerPoint slide. And Matt, I'm going to need your help to go point out where the Kiel Canal or the headwater of the Imperial is on this picture. Lest we forget, that's a picture after Irma, not immediately Irma, a few days afterwards. Matt's going to show you where the Kiel Canal would be located. If you notice, there's water from Bonita Beach Road all the way as far as you can see. Secondly, the analysis and the design standards that are in existence around here are not realistic. They're not adequate for the condition you designed for a 25-year isolated storm. And most of the floods we have are after lots of storms. Ground is saturated.
Excuse me, Fred.
Oh, I'm going to make a motion. I'm going to make a motion.
Fred, hang on, she's got a question. I'm sorry.
So
Bonita.
Bonita Beach Road is the.
In the foreground, the very first little piece of road just.
There, okay.
Yeah, down at the bottom.
Okay, gotcha.
Right-hand corner, and then up where Matt pointed was where the Kiel Canal or the Imperial River is. And all you see from Bonita Beach Road going that way is water. Now, anytime you take acreage and fill it, you're reducing the amount of storage, you're making things worse. I'm going to propose that either in this acknowledgement letter, and we could also add it to the letter that Mayor Simmons signed in 17, that we add this clause, and I want to give you the history of how that happened. Any changes in the reference FEMA map must be based on realistic hydrological studies. Real simple sentence. Now, secondly, here's what happened back in 17. What happened was, before the great flood of Irma, there was a request made to change the boundary of the flowway in the favor of a developer, where we approved outdoor storage. Those of us who were here remember that, down just below the motel, and there's a trailer court down there. It was certified off by an engineering firm or surveyor, came through community development, they acknowledged it, sent it on. It got automatically rubber stamped at the state level, and FEMA granted narrowing the floodway of the river. And that's down in a bowl. It's a bowl kind of like Quinn Street. So I just think we ought to add this to it. Now, we're not saying don't do it, we're just saying we want a realistic hydrological study that shows that this is okay to do it, period. So I make that motion.
And there's been and Derek, any
He's got a
thoughts
piece-
on that statement?
He's got a piece of paper, so I'll just copy it. But the question I had was, is that for you're asking to request to change this letter, or you're adding?
If we would put it into our normal letter we send, but if we send a special letter that just acknowledges this, we would put this in it. It's not saying don't do it, we're just saying we have a request. FEMA has got the power to ignore the request, but at least it draws attention to, needs to be a study.
I have a question for community development. Should this change in the map go in and then a development application come to us, would that hinder our ability to prevent development in an area that previously was wetlands or something like that? I think that's the question.
Good morning, Councilman. I'll handle the planning portion. I have Aida Williams to handle the flood issues. In terms of the request, there are different standards zoning-wise for different designations. And what is, just to be very specific with this request, what would this allow is a lesser permission or a request on what was it, the 15 acres, 14 acres, whatever it is that we're looking to moving the line. They would still be looking for permission to develop in that area, but it would be a much lower level of review. In terms of what that review is, Ms. Williams can, or Aida Williams can cover that.
So would you just tell us what, if it is the way it is now, what that entails for review, and if it changes to the other designation, what the review would, how that would be?
Not a problem. Aida Williams, floodplain manager with community development. Either way, they're going to have to provide us additional analysis, whether this is accepted by FEMA and a map revision is issued or not. They're asking to modify the boundary of the floodway area. The property itself will not be removed from the flood hazard area. So all of the flood hazard standards, both in the Florida Building Code, FEMA set of requirements, and our flood hazard ordinance will be applicable regardless. At this time, our ordinance actually does not restrict and prohibit anyone from building or encroaching into a floodway. They just simply have to adhere to a different set of standards and provide additional analysis when they do those encroachments. Our suggestion at this point is typically a encroachment into a floodway is handled locally with a no-rise certification for those developments. We do have that option that to not review that and have them to submit their data to FEMA under a conditional letter of map revision. So FEMA will take a look at the development when it encroaches into the floodway and say yes or no, it's going to work as far as not increasing the overall water elevations.
Okay. So they're sort of getting ahead of that process in a sense. I mean, it's perfectly okay to do that, but if they were to be at the application stage, they could do all these things at the same time and ask for FEMA to consider their changes and all that. Is that what you're saying?
By modifying the boundary lines now, it sets a better tone for the design of the development.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And I echo what Fred said, because I was one of those people that voted, I think you were too, Mayor, for that map change, and I felt that we were burnt there. And maybe we're overly sensitive, but that's why I'm asking so many questions, because I don't want to be burnt again.
No, and that's why staff would recommend that we not review locally and approve anything locally for an encroachment into the floodway with this area, because we know the history of it, that we would ask FEMA and their experts to review that on a conditional. So they would pre-approve any development on that property, and that would be a condition prior to any permits being released.
But if we do this now, we wouldn't be doing that. We wouldn't ask for FEMA because it will already be done. Is that
no,
correct?
It's a two-part process.
They would still do it?
Yes,
Okay,
the application they have now has nothing to do with any development. It's simply existing ground conditions with data and studies that FEMA had not yet incorporated into the maps.
And perhaps in the simplest of terms, if this goes forward, let's say hypothetically we approve this today, all we're asking is FEMA correct their own map.
Essentially, we're stating the form that would typically be signed if we didn't have the letter from 2017 would be an acknowledgement form that we agree with it and that it doesn't conflict any of our local ordinances. Since we can't make that determination, we provided the acknowledgement form so FEMA could review their application. So since this is not related to a development, We're not disagreeing with them based off of the additional studies. We're just saying FEMA's the expert in this math and review the data.
Thank you so much.
Fred?
Yes. Now, if you do build in a designated floodway, encroach into it, I believe that FEMA has additional design requirements on any structure that gets built in a floodway, because the current in the floodway is deemed to be going much faster than the water that's out just flooding the land, like you saw in the picture down the Beach Road. So right in that area, what's inside the floodway is considered a river and is considered moving at a much higher velocity. And that means if you're going to put something in, it's got to be designed not to break apart and cause more problems by jamming up the river with debris.
That is correct. There are the design standards, and they have to, before they touch anything,
So
they have
if
to
we-
prove the math that won't happen.
So if that floodway is eliminated on that 12 acres, then they don't have to follow those requirements.
They're not proposed, the math that's been presented to us is that they're not eliminating the floodway, just narrowing it, but they.
That's right. So
So,
when they narrow it, that 12 acres that comes up out of it, you can build in there to less standards than you'd have to if it's a floodway.
they do, any encroachment will have to
that a
provide the
clear yes?
additional analysis. We would still be reviewing for their construction standards in a flood hazard area.
Mayor?
Fred, you're good with that?
Well, no, there's a difference between the hazard area and the floodway.
Correct.
I think, and she's agreeing with me, so.
Right. Okay, yes.
Okay, Councilman Forbes has said a realistic hydraulic study. So it implies that there's been an unrealistic, or there's a study that is not good or not proper, or what?
Well, what we have is that panel in that section of that area has not been updated on our maps for what we can enforce in like 3 cycles. So even, I don't believe that there was any changes from the previous maps to the 08. We do have our preliminary maps that are pending that are roughly 12 to 15 months away. There's still no change there. They've not updated that area, even though that there have been additional studies.
That was my question, because I know we looked at the preliminary maps and hasn't changed there either.
It is not. There is no proposed changes off of our preliminary maps.
Fred?
To put it in a simple manner, there's a map that was issued by FEMA back in '08. They have not issued yet, and it'll probably be years before they issue maps based on Irma. So if this gets approved by FEMA, they're updating an '08 map that doesn't have the benefit of what happened in Irma and narrowing the floodway. That's the short of it.
Is that accurate?
Yes.
John, or
Well, that's-
anybody that wants to?
The current standard is generally a 25-year, 3-day storm event. And I think that the concern and conversations I've had with Councilman Forbes have involved the fact that most of our significant issues have not been based on that scenario. They've been based on different scenarios. And the question has always been, what do you do to reflect that when you perform a study? Because if you go away from the 25-year, 3-day storm event, you need to replace that with a new standard, or at least a new target, so that you know what to analyze. And I don't disagree with the fact that when we've had difficulties with stormwater in this area, it has come from a different event than what we study to. The trick is coming up with a more realistic model so that we actually have better data and not just different data.
Okay. Further discussion or questions, or? Okay, sorry, Fred, why don't you restate your motion?
Okay. All I'm saying is that either in the letter of acknowledgement, we would add, and we can also add it to our standard letter, any changes in the reference FEMA map must be based on realistic hydrological studies. And I'm not saying what realistic is, but
So you're saying motion to approve with?
if we do send something, that this be part of the letter.
And all letters.
And any letters that we send in the future.
I'll second that, but I'd like to hear from the applicant if they're in favor of it.
Okay, there's been a motion with that verbiage that was just read and a second for further discussion, and
Well,
we'd like to hear your thoughts on that additional language, please.
Elizabeth Fountain again with J.R. Evans for the record. We do not have a concern with adding that statement to the acknowledgement letter. However, I would like to clarify that there is a difference between hydrologic and hydraulic. Hydraulic would be based on the actual physical conditions of the conveyance or the waterways and how they behave with the flow of water. In this case, we corrected that information based on current conditions. We also added in the per FEMA's request, we added in the weir structure in Kill Canal to the model and the data. So really, it's a realistic hydraulic model. If we can make that clarification in the statement, that would be fine.
Why don't we put both words? Hydrologic one, hydraulic both.
Or what would be the difference between the two?
Yeah, in the easiest of terms, the difference between the two words, because I'll raise my hand. I do not know the difference.
Hydrologic, we can keep it. I'd like to keep it both of them to terms in there. It is what they refer to as an H&H study. Hydrologic refers to the actual flows coming from the watershed and the determination of those flows. And this correction is mainly taking those same flows that were determined and routing them through a more accurate hydraulic system.
So we'll do, Fred, your word, then slash that other word, and we want to amend your motion?
Still didn't explain the difference.
Actually, I was just checking, FEMA does it call hydrologic and hydraulic study, it's one name.
Say and.
right.
Say and.
Yeah.
One is.
Okay.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Good, thank you.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Council, are there more questions or further discussion? Okay. There's been a motion and a second, no further discussion. Roll call, please.
Councilman Gibson.
Aye.
Councilman Forbes.
Aye.
Councilwoman Carumba.
Aye.
Councilwoman Carr.
Aye.
Mayor Simmons.
Aye. Great.
And I just want to thank this discussion was very helpful to me. I think we learned a lot, and I appreciate the staff. That was really a good explanation for what was happening. And the applicant, sorry that we had to go through this, but we did this, 3 years ago with another applicant, and it didn't turn out well. So thank you for all your efforts.
You could take
Okay.
the picture, the slide down, turn the slide off.
Wonderful. Thanks for being here today, team. Thank you very much. Okay, now we're going to move on to mayor and council member items. Roman numeral 8A, discussion regarding request from Bonita Grand LLC for the city to provide a revised letter acknowledging.
We're on.
Boy, this has been a rough morning. I apologize, team. Item 9. We're going to try this again. Second reading of the following ordinances. I give up. Derek, you're up.
No problem, we got a second reading and a public hearing on an ordinance of the City Council of Bonita Springs, Florida, adopting the 2019 5-year capital improvement program annual update, providing for legislative finding, providing for severability, providing for codification, and providing for an effective date. This is your 5-year CIP.
Council, what's your pleasure?
So move.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Further discussion?
And any public.
Yeah, I'm sorry. And further, anybody from the public that would like to speak on this item? Please come forward. Just this item at this time? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Actually, you have to wait. Laura just left.
Well, there's 4 of us.
Yeah, but,
Only if you know you-
yeah, but during the ethics, they said you should not
You
do
should
roll
when
call. or
people go to the
something.
bathroom.
Because everybody's supposed to vote on something if they're present. And
Oh, yeah, that's.
There is a.
so,
there is a-
so nobody can not be on the record on how the.
Like you
on a
did
vote.
earlier, Fred,
Yeah.
right? You disappeared on a vote.
It's
Okay.
It's only on quasi-judicial.
Okay.
So you were okay, Fred.
All right, so we're going to wait.
I hope so.
Play the Jeopardy music.
I know, the Jeopardy music's playing.
We do,
You made a rule.
can we do the city attorney stuff? We could do the city attorney stuff, because that's not quasi-judicial, right?
Well, it's the actual.
No, she's
good.
here.
We're good.
Laura, we're waiting on you for this vote. No problems, I know.
The actual stat.
And I would just ask council, no, I know. Oh, no. I would just ask council here to, stay on the dais for votes, and that's not to pick on anybody, it's just part of what we need to do.
I thought I'd be back before.
No, that's great.
Now that we're four, we're five, we have to.
Well, we'd have to do it anyway, even if there were 7, but now,
Just for future reference, the statute that Councilman Gibson is talking about, that's any item, it's not just quasi. It's any item.
any item. Okay,
Any vote that requires a vote.
so I don't know what the discrete signal will be, but if there's an emergency,
Get up early.
and look, I'm not trying to, but we all get the idea, and
All right.
no, we're all good. Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? Anybody else need to take a break? Roll call, please.
Councilman Forbes.
Aye.
Councilwoman Carumba.
Aye.
Councilwoman Carr.
Aye.
Mayor Simmons.
Aye.
Councilman Gibson.
Aye.
Okay, item B.
Okay. Second reading and public hearing on an ordinance of the City of Bonita Springs, Florida, amending Section 4-130 of the Land Development Code to adjust the term limits on the zoning board chair, providing for severability, conflicts, codification, scrivener's errors, and providing for an effective date. As you recall, this is the change to the regulations that would allow Chairman Kurlander to stay on for an additional 2-year term.
Okay.
And that's just this one time, not a,
It's a change to the code, so, when he's gone, if we want to roll it back, we can roll it back, but we need to change the code again.
okay, 'cause I thought we were only doing it because of everything that's going on, and so it really only needed to take place this one time.
Can we put a sunset in it?
Yeah, can we put a sunset in it? That's a
It's not really a sunset because we'd have to re-adopt a new ordinance.
No,
We
the
could,
ordinance reverts back to what it is as of a certain date.
yeah, that's not really a possibility. Well, I could do this. We could do, we could leave it in,
What's the current ordinance?
it's just one line, no person shall act as chair for more than 2 consecutive years. We crossed the 2 out, made it 4. We could do up until 2022, at which time, it would be.
That would work.
Will that work?
Terms. Yeah, I mean, that would resolve the
We
issue.
had to have an ordinance that just so specified for an individual person. We should,
Well, I think maybe just, I don't know when the regulation was adopted that came up with the 2-year term, but maybe if you just think about what the rationale might have been for that.
But it's
It was
1 year.
probably just give rotations to people, but of course, the benefit of having a chair is that the chair can have that institutional knowledge and
but
keep
they're
things going.
1-year terms that could be repeated. That's how you come up with the 2. Isn't that what it is? Is that what the ordinance is? Current ordinance?
I didn't look at the, I don't have the whole ordinance in front of me, we can pull it up real quick, but it's basically just says no person shall act as chair for more than 2 consecutive years. And of course, they elect their own chair, so,
What you were describing is each individual board member of all the committees are reappointed each year, depending on their term. And that was to the previous resolution we had.
I don't think we have to make too much out of this, but I think it's better not to have an ordinance for just one particular purpose. I think it's a bad policy, so I'd rather have the 4 years and then we go and rescind it after, when he's ready to retire or whatever it is.
well, it's also quite undemocratic. I mean, the chairmanship is appointed by the members of the zoning board, so. No, I'm sorry, it is selected by the mayor.
By the
So
mayor.
do you want, we can go back to, on those concerns, we can go back to just doing it as in 2 years, and then just for this one-time 4-year term, so it would be after 2022. So it's of council's discretion, how you like to handle it.
Well, I know certainly the zoning board feels strongly he should remain the chair. He has expressed a desire to me to remain as chair. To let him stay on as chair is not unconstitutional. It's not against our city charter. So what language would that entail?
Well, this would allow him to stay on for.
I know, but let's just be,
Can we do an exception? or-
Yeah.
I think we should do it, but never mind, I'm just.
No, Amy, your point is very well taken. I'm just trying to have it read so that it's correct.
I think what you might want to look at is I don't know the rationale behind the original 2 years, but I think the rationale behind the 4 years was that the institutional knowledge that a chair can bring with the many issues they have to work through. So it might make sense in the future that not just for this individual, you might want the chair to have an opportunity to have 4 years, just based on the gravity of the work that they do as zoning board, but that's.
Or why even have that in there?
Yeah.
'Cause it-
Or just
because
remove it.
We can
And then
change
it's
it
the,
really
because
at
you
any
have other
time.
committees where it is sometimes difficult to get volunteers and those who
Exactly,
commit
right.
their
Do
time.
we have limits in other committees?
Yes.
We do?
We have,
Not
I
in
think
all.
the LPA has a.
But not in all your committees,
But aren't
because you,
public places, so
no, you do not.
a lot of them don't.
Yeah. But if we appoint, then why can't we just take it out completely?
Well, the point is that somebody's selecting the chair, and that's by a vote, and that can be,
But we could do the vote every year. And, I mean, he's the support of the whole board, of the zoning board, and I think he has the whole support here. He's a treasurer, so, but I agree with Amy that we shouldn't, constrict, one specific law just around one person. What happens if he dies or has to move?
No.
No, I know, I'm sorry. But, it's just sort of like.
I think the big problem is if we're really looking to keep that, institutional knowledge there, then why are we limiting ourselves to 2 years or 4 years? Just take it out altogether. And it's really up to our pleasure when we can change it, if there's a problem there, we have the power to change that.
Is that a motion, Councilman Gibson?
Or you could make it annual renewable, but it has to be reappointed.
But yeah, we always have to
That way
appoint,
we
but
don't put the limit on.
we just get rid of the limit that says we have to pick somebody
Not
different,
happy,
yeah.
then Just say we're not renewing, or whatever we're going to say.
I certainly believe it should be consistent for each committee, right?
Yeah.
So I'll tell you what, I'll make a motion just to remove that entirely.
so to remove that entire limitation on,
Well, just remove the 2-year term limits,
I second it.
For the other committee. too.
and for every committee. And we can,
We'll bring that
okay, we'll do that at a future meeting.
Some of
Okay.
your committees do and.
Yeah, no, absolutely, great point. It's a great point, absolutely.
the only reason I could have ever thought that this could have, looking at the whole code, only reason it would have been in there is because the mayor gets to appoint, but then again, the mayors change, and every year you're reappointing the members themselves, so it's not like it's
Well, that's a very significant committee. I can understand where you don't want it to be controlled by anyone or any faction, so you'd want to have some throughput there.
No, great point. There's been a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Carumba?
Aye.
Councilwoman Carr?
Aye.
Mayor Simmons?
Aye.
Councilman Gibson?
Aye.
Councilman Forbes?
Aye.
And any member of the public that would like to speak on this item, just this item? Seeing none? Okay. I guess we took the vote ahead of the public comment. All right, public comment.
Did you have a hard night?
No, I didn't. I really didn't. Members of the public that would like to speak.
Public comment.
Yes, open public comment. Please come forward.
You're doing a great job.
Not really, but thank you.
No, we're having fun up here.
Yeah, right.
Good morning again, everyone.
Good morning.
I just wanted to take a few minutes to thank Adam Botano for the wonderful, wonderful boat parade we had on Saturday night. If you all had the opportunity to watch it, you'll agree. We had so many beautifully decorated boats. The weather was perfect. It's just wonderful. I know he puts a lot of time and effort in that, so. And I saw you too, Mayor. Thanks.
Lights were working on one side of the boat, and half the lights were working on the other side of the boat. So I took in the Broken Anchor Award once again. Thank you, Kathy. Other members of the public that would like to speak, please come forward at this time. Morning, Ben.
Morning, Ben Hershenson. Just a simple question going back and a kind of a postmortem to what you just did. It's a rhetorical question. I know I'm not supposed to ask questions, but I'll make it and then I'll sit down. Why do we have term limits for committee members anyway?
Thank you, Ben. Other members of the public that would like to speak on any item? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on to the city attorney's report.
okay.
Derek.
I've got, so far, I've just wanted to confirm, so local planning agency is the only other agency I've found so far, so we'll bring an ordinance to take that out as well for the chair, and that chairmanship, I think the chair just resigned in that board anyway. The first item I have is related to our our friends at the WCI litigation. We have, if you recall, the arbitration award, it's in your packet, awarded WCI Lennar attorney's fees and costs. I reviewed the attorney's fees. It took a little while for them to get everything to us redacted form. I have some issues with some of the fees that they've charged, and I've reduced probably, at this point, it looks like about $30,000. I'm going to continue to look at that, reducing it. What I'm asking for today is authorization to have the mayor sign a budget transfer resolution in an amount not to exceed the amounts that are shown in the green sheet, which is about $800,000. I'm also asking for authorization for the mayor to sign a release. So part of this is we have a second case. This was, I think we've discussed it as the fees for fees case. It's sort of, it was a case that the city lost, and then we had an award against us for attorney's fees. Those fees have racked up to almost $200,000. And the more we litigate that, if we have it on appeal currently to the District Court of Appeals, but as that issue continues to evolve, but whichever side comes out of it is going to end up paying the attorney's fees of the other side. And so what I have asked for and got some acknowledgement from counsel for WCI is, if we're going to resolve these issues on attorney's fees, I want it to be global, to be with all the cases we have, and it's finished. No more attorney's fees if we have continuing litigation regarding the annexation agreement or any of the other issues. They've indicated that they would be willing to accept that. So that's the authorization I'm asking for today, which is authorization to negotiate the final fee amounts not to exceed the amounts that are in the green sheet, and to get sign a release so that we're not dealing with attorney's fees issues any further on those cases.
And to clarify for the record, for the budget resolution that we would be asking authorization for the mayor to sign, if you recall, in this fiscal year, you have $900,000 in legal contingency fund, and that is where we would be recommending that the funds come from.
Well, as painful as it is, I agree with your reasoning, and we
Yeah.
should stop the bleeding and pay our bills. So I move that we follow the recommendation of the green sheet.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion and a second. Is there further discussion, council? Roll call, please.
Councilwoman Carr?
Aye.
Mayor Simmons?
No.
Councilman Gibson?
Aye.
Councilman Forbes?
Aye.
Councilwoman Carumba?
Aye.
Was that 3-2?
4-1.
4 to
No,
1?
Mike?
No.
You
Mike
voted yes?
against it.
Yes.
So did I.
Oh, great.
Yeah, 4-1.
Okay.
Good thing somebody's paying attention. No, I'm kidding.
Yes.
I'm trying to make a rebound here on the meeting. All right, item B, Derek, moving right along.
I'm going to actually turn this one over to John, because he stuck it under my eyes, but I don't know anything about it.
Okay.
Oh, pass it.
That's not true.
That's not true.
Yes, Carly.
Mr. Mayor, this was the full blessing of the city attorney, and I'm warning again.
And the mayor.
And the mayor.
Yep, full blessing.
This item before you is an attempt to address some changes that were made by the Florida legislature in the last session. What it has done is modified building permit fee requirements in terms of the limit of that fund, and also reporting and tracking information that will be on our end, but not part of this item. So there are two things that are included in your packet. So if you go through, and I'm going to walk you through the attachments behind your green sheet real quick so we know what we have, and then we can go through a discussion, is you have the proposed resolution, which identifies what we're trying to do. It identifies amendments to statute chapter 553.80, and what we intend to do with a temporary reduction of fees for 30%. It identifies the types of fees we wish to reduce. And it also states that that reduction will only last for 1 year from the effective date of this resolution, at which time they will return to their current rate. However, the second thing that is also in there, it identifies a new International Code Council construction value table. That value in that table is used to calculate building permit fees, where we do it based upon the value of the construction. An applicant has two choices when they go under those types of fees. They can either provide us a contract, and that contract is then applied to a multiplier that comes with the building permit fee, or we can go to the default value. Our latest value that we have in our tables was adopted in 2009. So once we get past the proposed resolution, we can get into Building permit fee schedule update. Residential, commercial, and trade permits is on the back of the page following the resolution. And that states there's a 30% reduction for residential, commercial, and trade permits. The next attachment, the cost per square foot, is in the title, and that is an Excel table. And that is what I had identified in terms of the International Code Council values of construction. There seems to be a little bit of confusion, so if I can answer any questions before we go any further, I'll...
I'm sorry, but it's gobbledygook to me, all right? I understand the 30% reduction that's based under, ranges in valuation, and then, if I heard you correctly, an applicant could also say, no, I don't want to take that table, I want to look at this international building code. All right, and these are just, we don't have any control over those fees, or we do have control over those fees?
We do.
We do?
And when the last time we took control of that table, they produced this table that you're looking at where it says cost per square foot quarterly. We had adopted the table that was produced in 2009 for our building permit fees. And the reason why we did that was we look at basing the value of a building permit for residential and commercial based upon the construction value. There's a number of ways you can do it. That's how the council at the time had chosen to do it.
What does 1A, 1B, 1?
Those are commercial, or I'm sorry, those are construction types. I do have the building official here.
These tables, what does this have to do with the reduction in the fee?
They're two separate things, but they all go together towards the calculation of the fee.
So anyone that follows the tables would not have a 30% reduction?
They would have a 30% reduction off of the table.
They would or would not?
They would.
So these numbers would be reduced by 30% when they come in to pay the fee. Is that correct?
Let me see if I can
You're talking in circles, I'm sorry.
The legislature has decreed that the local governments, under the building code, were authorized by statute to collect fees to cover our costs. They have indicated that because those fees, particularly what we call like an enterprise fund, should pay for itself, but they have said that local governments who have accumulated large surpluses of fees are required to burn those surpluses off, because effectively you're supposed to be paying for yourself, and if you've been hoarding cash, we want you to do that. So the response local governments have come up with is to reduce fees for a period of time so that they're operating essentially in the red for a period to reduce that amount. What John is bringing forward to you is a two-part resolution. One is our fees were actually a little bit low already, and they hadn't been kept up with some of the fee schedules and moved on. So this is this table he's adding. So we're adding up a new fee structure, and we're also reducing temporarily that new fee structure for a period of time so we can burn off those reserves. But in the end, we will have an updated fee solution. Is that in English as best?
Yes.
We're adopting these new tables because we weren't doing it appropriately. But when they come to the window and they use one of those tables, we take that number, 200, and we reduce it by 30%, and that's what they pay.
Correct.
Okay, good.
So,
Well, we're reducing it because the state's telling us.
Laura, then Mike.
Yes.
Not because we were doing it wrong. The state's telling us.
And Fred.
We have to do this. They're better at telling us what to do with our money. Yes, got it.
That's how they feel, yes.
Yes.
But would that be accurate?
No, but.
Okay. But, I agree. Whether it's accurate or not, Laura. Mike?
So because we've been taking in too much money, we have to reduce it 30%. Correct. But you said that our previous tables were too low, so we've already been taking in too much money, so now we're gonna raise them to a higher amount, even though we're temporarily reducing it 30%. So we're still gonna be bringing in more.
Well, we're asking a lot of questions before we've gotten to understanding the lay of the land. And the reason why this is a temporary reduction is that during that temporary reduction period, we're looking at revising some of these fees so that when we come out of this time, we have something that is a little more accurate in terms of a balance that goes towards these.
But you just said that the old numbers were low, so this new table's higher. So if we've already been too high in accumulating money, going to a higher number, how's that going to help us in the future?
Hold on. The issue is not the value of the construction costs. The issue goes down to what you're using to multiply to create that fee off of that value. If it costs $100 to construct something, me telling you it costs $50 doesn't make it more accurate data. But if I'm calculating the building permit fee based upon the construction value, I need to come up with a more accurate calculation to come up with that fee, not artificially try to adjust the value of construction.
So we're trying to go off the construction fees so that we can get from the builder.
Correct.
And hopefully have a better number that might be lower, so we're not taking in too much money. I had one other question about the previous table on the 5th page. It says, you know, you have your valuation total $1 to 2,000, then 2001 to 25,000. All the way to the right, it has the additional amount per $1,000.
Which, I'm sorry, what's the heading on that?
Building permit fee schedule update, residential, commercial, trade. It's the small table, only 3 columns wide. Yeah, that one. So, say I was doing something that was $26,000. Would I be able to do the $25,000 level and then pay the additional per 1,000 of $8 or $9.80 to where I'd only be paying $60 instead of the $277 at the next level? Why is there an additional amount per 1,000 when the next level is $1 above that previous level?
For the record, Peter Higas, building official. This table was set up, the valuation table was set in tiers so that as the value of the permit was higher, the cost per 1,000 was reduced a little bit more so that, so if it's 25,000, it was $277.90, and then if it was 26,000, you'd add $679 to that. So that would be 280,
So that
284,
that base permit fee is not for anything between 25,001 to 50. It's only for 25,001, and then for 26,000, you have to add.
Yeah, anything between 25 and 26 would add $6.79. Then you get to the next level at 50,000, there's a base value, and then it would be adding only $461 per 1,000.
Because I was reading it as if your project is between $25,000 and one to 50,000, that your fee is just $277.90, and then
No,
the additional. Right, I didn't understand the additional per 1,000 because you're showing a range.
well, between those ranges of 25 to 50, 50 to 100, 100 to 500, there's calculated value of a base fee, and then per 1,000 above that lower number or the higher number, then there's more.
Okay, so if it was 50,000, it would be the $277.90 plus 25 times $6.79.
No, the 50,000 would be 447.65.
Well, that's
It's like a
actually that doesn't make sense either. That one says 51 and $1, but because your valuation total, it goes up to the next level starts at 50 and
Right.
$1.
It looks like a typo there, but it's.
But yeah, that one's off.
Oh.
But so because the top end, your first column, it goes to 2,000, 25,000, 50,000. So if you were at that 50,000, you should still be in that base permit fee, because the next level wouldn't start until $50,001.
Correct.
So at 50,000, it would be $277.90 plus you're adding.
No, at 50,000, it's between 25 and 50. It starts at 25,000 is 277.90, and then if it's 51, you add 679. If it's
But if it's 50, you would add 25 times $6.79 to that 277.
right, and that's how you end up with the next number at the beginning of 50 at 447.65.
Okay, because I just saw the range there, so I figured the base fee covered anything in that range, and then I thought the additional 1,000 was if you went out of that range, but the next range covers it.
Base fee is that, beginning fee is what that value, the base fee is then that every $1,000 above the 25 and every 1,000 above 100 and so on and so forth.
Okay.
And then as the permit value is higher, those additional thousands are reduced.
Yeah. Okay.
Fred? Thanks, Mike. Fred?
Yeah, why couldn't we, first of all, I think lowering it down 30% and then a year later it's going to go back up. Why don't we retroactively give back money and then take enough time to do that to figure out this thing so it's as fair as you want to make it within what we're trying to do? But that way we don't have to get people in the habit of feeling they can buy a building permit for this and all of a sudden it goes this, just refund some money going backwards. We've got good records on what we've charged.
What are you thinking, John?
Or is the state telling us we have to do this 30% thing?
No, actually, the state identifies refunds as an option.
Yeah.
It is the most labor-intensive form of the reduction, but it is identified and permissible.
May I make one?
You don't get into the optics.
Why don't we put the
dropping
onus
it down
on
and
the
pushing it up.
person who wants the refund?
Well, and that's what I was going to suggest. I wouldn't say that we initially just go hunt down all the refunds, because I talked with John yesterday, but there's a lot of projects out there, and it would be very time intensive. But the possibility where I think it actually would probably be appropriate is those projects that have open development orders that are halfway through their project or somewhere along their line, that they would have an opportunity to apply. So they're going to be paying the reduction going forward, but they should be able to apply for stuff that they're halfway through to get reduction, and that would reduce the pool, and it would make it easier, and it would put the onus on the applicant to request that.
The only thing I would ask is that you let us come back with a reduction if that's the direction you wish to go, simply because there are regulations in there on how it needs to be handled and what we need to do. And it just simply stating reduction is probably not going to check all the boxes. We're happy to do it, but I want to make sure if we're going to do it, we do it right.
I mean refund.
I'm sorry, refund. Thank you. Yes, that is correct.
Because a timing would be, if you want to do it beyond the open development orders, if you want to go back.
Well, I want to be very specific as to what's going to be included and what's not included, and make sure that we line up with what we're supposed to.
Could we defer this to the next meeting so you'd have time to come back with your recommendations specifically how to do this?
If that's the direction, yes.
I think that's best, don't you? I think that's best.
We
Okay.
can fix that typo too.
Yeah, don't think I forgot about that. I was gonna wait till we were done and then ask you about the typo, Rooney. Which one is it?
Real quick, also, just one, we talked about the surpluses that we raise. So the statute has prohibitions, says we can't use the funds for certain things. But two things that have an effect on why we have surpluses, is one, it's not taking into account the recent changes in law that allow private providers. So you're paying for staffing and inspectors and all those things, but where previously you always collected fees on every permit, and so you could budget appropriately. Now the laws with regards to private providers have really limited any collection of funds. So you might have a lot of staff sitting around not doing anything, but you can't plan appropriately because you don't know which projects come in with private providers and which ones are not going to come in with private providers. It's very difficult to gauge that. The other thing is those monies can be set aside reserves for training, facilities, all sorts of other things that you sort of need to build a surplus up to spend it. Now, we didn't have anything to spend it on right away, so that's why we're recommending the reduction.
We can't now put in something because we've got lots we could spend it on.
There's going to be some stuff we are going to do.
In the budget we'll be reviewing, we have a CIP for scanning and electronic permitting. Additionally, we understand some local jurisdictions have been looking at where current building codes have not been adhered to and foreclosures happen by the local government, and the cost of the demolition of those buildings that are unsafe can possibly come from those funds. So those are some things we've been talking with Derek about to see if we can implement some of these code enforcement cases where the building's not been maintained and requires a demolition, if those costs can happen. We'd also like to consider some additional education and training for our neighborhood services department for those folks to become more certified within building code inspection, so that can be part of their assistance as well. And some of those can be charged to the fund too.
just so this council is aware, we don't often talk about building permits and we don't often talk about inspections in these meetings, simply because it is a relatively straightforward process. I don't like to say this publicly very often, but Pete does run a pretty efficient department. And things in that world tend to be, I'm not going to say smooth, but they tend to be predictable. When they do come up, I knew, and I was even warned that this is going to be something we have to bring everybody up to speed in, simply because we discuss it so infrequently. However, in this particular year, there were quite a few changes, not only in what impacts you indirectly or directly, but also in how we need to report certain things to the state as well. So that's why we're bringing some of these things forward. I know that you were hit cold on it. For that, I apologize, but there are certain times that we have to bring things that are normally just handled for you forward and try to bring everybody up and get everybody on the same page. So,
Just
yes, ma'am.
two things. To follow up on Derek, when you're talking about private service providers, you're talking about the applicant having their own engineer or something like that. And when we...
They can have their own inspectors as well.
Inspectors, too, which has its own issues, but anyway. So when we had our original, when we're thinking about building permits, we always include the labor of staff people to do that kind of thing. So is that correct?
Correct. And what's happened now is the legislature, almost every session would be, whittles that away a little bit more. So now it's private providers, private plans reviewers, private building official, so they can do all that, and they've limited what fees we can charge to sort of duplicate any work. So to just to protect the public and look at the plans and say, you know.
So that's why this fund has grown, because these
It
things
has
that
an
we
impact.
typically have allocated the labor, we can't do anymore. And then I just have a suggestion that perhaps, I know we're always trying to look for areas where we can use the building fund, because we already knew it was restricted, and it seems to be even more restricted, but maybe the staff, in their free time, might want to have a presentation of plans for that money in the future. And I mean, we always hear the term facility, which is kind of, if we ever need a facility, we need a lot more than whatever the $8 million that's in there. So I think, and is it possible to sort of earmark some of that fund, even if it's high? We could say we're planning to have a new facility in 5 years or something like that, or can you not do that? Sort of like a CIP of the building fund?
You're talking about almost saving for a particular improvement that is possible, but
Is that allowed? And if we had a program or a plan, could we hold these balances that are sort of higher?
The simple answer is yes, but there is a more complicated explanation behind that, and I'm probably not the one that has the training to tell you what they are.
But anyway, we don't have to answer that now, but my recommendation would be that we get a better understanding of that. And I'm all for making it a little easier for people to do their building. We don't have to add fees on fees on fees and fees, but if there is a way that we could run our department the way we can, because otherwise if we have a need, we're going to have to take it out of the general fund. That's the bottom line.
Council, anything further? John,
Can we get the permit to state right up front that they're going to be using private inspectors and et cetera?
Well, they tell us that.
And they tell us exactly the company or the person?
Yeah, it usually only happens on bigger projects.
Uh-huh,
Someone's
okay.
trying to get something done.
And then do we double check? Because, Amy, the conflict of interest going on.
There's actually two types of private inspection systems. The first has always been in the building codes, where large high-rises and things of that nature are considered threshold buildings, and all the structural components of those buildings have to be inspected by an engineer, and the building departments, as a rule, don't inspect those parts of the buildings, although we do have the option to follow those inspectors and check them if we want to. The private provider industry came into place during the boom when some municipalities were falling behind in getting their inspections done on a timely basis. So they looked for another way to get their inspections done so they could keep their construction moving along. Basically the statute calls for them to notify us when they submit for the permit that they're going to use a private third-party engineer and inspection service, and we are now reducing those fees by 50% for them doing inspections, and we would reduce it, we would reduce the plan review fee by 50% if they're also conducting the plan review. What they don't allow them to do is just do the plan review and not do the inspections. Most of them are, we don't get too many of them, we get maybe one a month, maybe two, of single-family homes, mostly from Cape Coral builders who got into that rhythm because of what was happening in Cape Coral. So when they come and build down here in Bonita, they also, just by the fact that they've been using them up there, they use them down here. And we still have to audit them, we still have to control the permit and issue the CO when they've given us a final letter of completion. So,
So we're going to table this until you give us the update.
well, the table is going to be,
And we're going to table the,
oh,
is that what we're going to do?
One question.
Continue.
Fred?
On
Continue.
that- On that private inspection, and these are done by primarily engineering firms, I believe.
correct.
Can we verify that these guys have got liability for errors and omissions? Because
Yes, they all have to provide
they
documentation.
have to provide that to the city.
That they have
Good.
all the insurances, and that all the people that are conducting the inspections are also licensed as inspectors as we are.
And they have, we verify they have insurance.
Yes, sir.
Good.
Council, anything else? Amy? No?
Good.
Okay. Till next time.
Did you want to bring this back in January? I know that meeting is starting to fill up because you have one meeting in the month, or did you want to look at the first meeting in February for the continuance of this item? It's entirely up
Staff's
to you.
pleasure.
Staff's pleasure.
You have to do the work.
Yeah.
We just have to listen.
We can be
You
ready
already
to
got
go in January. I just don't want to overbook your meeting. so.
We'll review the agendas.
Yeah.
Well, and we've discussed most of it already, so.
Yeah, we discussed a lot.
Discuss and read.
Thank you.
Just fix it off.
We'll dissect the dissection again in the future.
I'll put in a couple of new typos to make sure they're all.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. Love that accent, Pete. Don't ever lose it. Okay, buddy. Moving along to city manager's items.
Yes, Mayor and Council, we have before you the proposals for the Wonder Gardens potential lease. Back in September, we began the advertising of the letter of interest for the cafe, the Wonder Gardens Cafe. We did receive a one-page letter from Concierge Restaurant Management. Unfortunately, the rest of the documents that we had requested of the LOI were not included by that applicant. And we did receive, as you recall, the City Council revised the letter of interest to permit the Bonita Wonder Gardens to have a proposal that was not a restaurant submitted, and that has been included as well. So we'd like to offer you some considerations. This is council's pleasure. You may ask the staff to go back and ask that Concierge Restaurant Management provide additional information so that it could be fully evaluated. You also, at this time, could direct staff to begin conversation with Bonita Wonder Gardens to discuss a potential lease agreement for the space, or you could reject the proposals without prejudice, meaning that any of these applicants that you have before you could come forward again and re-advertise as well. And the City Council's pleasure as the proposal of the LOI was written.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Fred.
Well, I know what I think. I would like somewhere as quick as we can to go back and find out. We had some pretty good applicants that were going to submit and they didn't submit. I don't know if staff could probe and find out maybe there was something in our specs that was scaring people off. Whatever we do though, I think we should make sure that there's something done so that this getting in and out of that front parking lot can be, is there some way they have to go back to the back parking lot and make a U-turn, something to make it so it's less of a problem on traffic? 'Cause I'm kind of asking a question. Do you?
I have, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, are you done?
Well, do we have a thought on the question? No?
I have a
Okay.
question.
Amy?
About the process, because I think I remember that when we did this a few iterations ago, that the staff was going to have like a committee to review the applications. Do we have that in place?
Well, we had a review of the applications that came in, and what you only received was we did not want to not forward every proposal received. In looking at it, there is only a one-page document provided by Concierge Restaurant Management. If we were to be reviewing it, would be incomplete. So if the council wishes, we can reach out to them, which would be outside of the LOI process for additional information.
And
The
then-
only-
Okay, thank
And the
you.
only other application you receive then is.
Then I also, to follow up on the point that I think Fred is making, do we as a staff, do we have any preference for what should be there? I mean, do we have any planning that's gone into that? Any dreaming about what would be appropriate for that area? As it's one of the bookends to the downtown area, is that there been any effort to decide? I know we advertised to have a restaurant, but that was because there was a restaurant there. I don't know if it's better to have a restaurant, or is it better to have a part of the Everglades Wonder Garden? So, because we only have one application. I mean, this is all it is, basically. But I think we need to decide what direction we want to go there. I think traffic is an issue, what he's talking about, and even though we had advertised for a restaurant, did we ever analyze what the traffic situation was there? So are we going down the wrong path there?
So when we reviewed this with DPZ, they looked at the Wonder Gardens as a separate entity, as well as the parks as city parks. There wasn't quite more exploration into that individual. It was sort of identified as more of that public space when we were looking through the different categorizations. And I think when they were reviewing it, we had already been for quite a while in the process of advertising an LOI for a restaurant space there. So I don't think we've really worked with our consultants on planning for that area as further than what's been identified
And
there.
then finally, from a financial point of view, whatever contract we make with whatever entity goes in there, is there a difference in what we would ask for from the Everglades Wonder Garden as opposed to a restaurant? Is it just going to be a strict lease arrangement where they pay so much a month? I mean, I don't know what our business plan is there. So what is it?
So within the LOI, there was a requirement to lay out a business plan, which is why we're bringing forward, there was the only one-page application. It did not have the business plan. If you recall previously, we had gone through the LOI process, and unfortunately, the previous applicants had difficulty showing the financial wherewithal to sustain the restaurant. So we did put requirements within this LOI that showed the financial commitment to be able to make the restaurant move forward, having a proposed idea of what the lease could look like. In this proposal we have from the Wonder Gardens, I do know you have representatives here. I think it refers to a beneficially mutual arrangement between both parties. So it doesn't describe their anticipation of how they would agree.
But would we be looking towards something like $600 a month? I mean, what are we talking about here?
I think what we would need to go back and do is look at the market rate for rentals and probably talk with some real estate agents to get an idea of what current rates are.
Typically would have a participation in there, isn't how they run those? So, I mean, there's
And some of the discussion we had is if there were renovations that a restaurant wanted to do that were beyond the necessary to meet minimum building code and ADA requirements, we were going to look at what those improvements would be added to the value of the structure and where you wanted to be in a long-term lease with those folks.
And just for a point of information, I'm in favor of this Everglades proposal, but I want it to be on the same financial basis that we could get somewhere else. I mean, this is time for us to be business people rather than emotional. I'm a big supporter. They've done a great job. I think that would be a good use of the property, but I think we need to get some kind of reasonable financial arrangement. And I don't know what we're talking about, so I can't even say what that would be. So I can't make a decision.
Laura, then Fred.
I echo Amy's feelings and thoughts. I would motion that staff re-advertise, make a note to the concierge management group, and just say your application is incomplete, and then, again, they can do what they do with that. And then I would like to actually meet with the Wonder Gardens, Tom, and maybe some of the board members, and just kind of get down to some of the workings of the logistics of the business structure between Wonder Gardens and the city. So that would be my motion, is to re-advertise, and with, of course, no prejudice to the Wonder Gardens, and to explore that further.
Thank you. Fred?
Yeah, have we gone ahead and actually spent the 75 or 100 grand remodeling the thing to be ADA now?
We have done the design work, we have not
We have
done the
not yet spent
construction.
that money.
Correct. We are looking to award to a contractor the scope that has been done by the engineer.
And were all the applicants aware of what was being done on the design?
Correct. And there was a open house as well provided for the walkthrough.
I'll second Laura's recommendation, or motion, providing we put the wordings in that you did about without prejudice or whatever it was. But I would encourage us, before we go back out and advertise, let's find out from the people that were interested in this, that why did you not turn a proposal in? There has to be some reason.
There were several, yes.
Because during the LOI,
Yeah, before it's issued,
So,
yeah.
so before, we would bring, if you give us an opportunity to bring back the LOI in order to do that outreach, so that there's no prejudice within doing outreach with applicants while you have an open LOI, could be troublesome. So if you let us do that outreach before we open the LOI again.
Yeah, in the right sequence, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I'll support what Laura and Fred are saying, but I also feel like the Wonder Gardens has put in their application, right? They've played by our rules that we've set up here. So I'm not pointing the finger at anybody. I'll just point it at myself. If I need to micromanage this process of what's going on down there a little bit more, I'll take the blame, I'll take the heat. But it seems like we have one applicant here that's played by the rules, and now all of a sudden they're being penalized. And I don't think that's fair. So loop me into these meetings, add me to this staff, add me to this committee, please.
Oh, me
Because
too.
whatever's happening, it's not working.
Me too, I agree.
Well, you guys,
However that can be done, and if that can't be done, I'm making a statement that whatever process we're using right now is not working.
I don't think,
well,
We don't have to agree on that. I'm just saying that's how I look at this. We have one applicant here that's all of a sudden being penalized. They've played by the rules, we've got a lot of paper here, and now we're going back to the drawing board.
I want to make sure we're all on the same page. The council can't be on the selection committee if you intend to vote on the.
We cannot
Whoever's
be on
selected, correct. The issue is, we put out a fairly broad RFP. We had multiple meetings where the council directed us to make it broad. Two people applied, one didn't qualify, and the other one did. So I don't know that they're being penalized if nobody else applied. The question
Well,
really goes to.
Otherwise, I stand prepared to vote, is what I'm trying to say. So in
there is a
essence, they are
motion.
there's been a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? Fred?
Did the Wonder Gardens submit the same kind of financials that were required of the restaurant RFP?
Correct. They submitted everything that was within the LOI with the
So
understanding
they
that it was not a
actually-
use as a restaurant.
So the committee was satisfied that they financially had the wherewithal to enter into the lease?
I was going to mention this privately, but I do think that the financials are not up to date.
I was too privately,
They need to be, they're from 2016, so if we're going to go down the financial route, we need an up-to-date.
The recent one was in there as well.
I think so.
Would,
Not the one we got.
Not the one we received. But that's why I'd like to meet with the folks and get into the nitty-gritty of the financials.
okay. Council, is there further discussion?
Well,
Mike?
and I'm fine with it not being a restaurant. Yeah, I wanted it to be open to anybody that wanted to do anything there. So I am fine with voting. Big thing in my head is, what is the rent going to be? Going into this,
What's the rent currently that the Wonder Gardens is paying?
$1 per year. So initially, you know, knowing what things kind of rent for, in my head, the restaurant building, I was thinking about $2,000. It'd be good to get a firm grip on that, you know, but yeah, we need to start bringing in some kind of money from the property, so.
And I think in their
question?
Fred and then Amy.
They
Or
had,
Amy, then Fred.
they had rented that for, I think, 13,000 or so. That was what they had gotten when it was a restaurant or something.
Right.
That was in their financial report.
Thanks, Amy. Fred?
Well, I think we need more than $1 a year. I do believe that. But I think maybe when we go back out on this, what's the harm, especially if we don't rush ahead and do the construction before we get our minds made up? Why can't we just say we're open to other proposals such as small gift shops, whatever? Because maybe the thing is that a restaurant isn't the magic thing for that location, but there's something else it is. It doesn't cost anything to look.
So just so we're all again on the same page, the last proposal that went out had been the second round, and it was for restaurants. So to your point, Councilman Forbes, it was directly for restaurants. It was, the Wonder Gardens came up at the hearing and said, you know, we're right here adjacent to it, so we would like to submit an alternative proposal. So the council authorized opening up. So to the extent that they don't match what the RFP was, they were always an exception because the RFP was designed for restaurants.
Right, but as a default landlord,
Yeah.
$1 a year, and now you're gonna go expand?
But this is a select, the RFP was to select the proper user, and then we would negotiate the rates afterwards. It's not, the rates weren't necessarily into the proposal.
In the LOI, there wasn't a suggestion of what the rate would be, so that would be something that would have to be discussed during the lease negotiation.
Well, I think it should be market rate. That's something we should look at ahead of time, find out what the market rate is, and that should be part of the thing. We're renting this is what we expect to get out of it.
Has that been done? Have we looked at market
Again,
rate?
that was not what the LOI was. The LOI was to get the user, and then, once you've selected the user, we would work that part of the deal.
Well, maybe they need to know that.
I think
Key to
maybe
the
that's part of the
decision.
problem.
Well, just review for me the process that we're supposed to be looking at with analyzing the letter of interest. We're supposed to see if they're financially viable. We're supposed to see if the use is something we want, and what else are we supposed to look at?
So, well, when you had the first RFP for the project, you did get a lot more interest. But many of those interests were effectively startups. They were people with no history to drive off of. And so the reason why there was financial requirements is to show that whoever was bidding was a responsible bidder, that someone that could follow through. And then one of the issues that came up in the first bid, of course, was how to pay for the ADA issues. And so the city staff recommended, well, let's just do that. If that was a barrier to the first RFP, we will do that ourselves so that it's not a barrier going forward. So I just want to be clear that all the RFPs that have gone out have reduced the barriers that have shown up with prior submittals, and yet there has been less interest. So if we had put into the LOI, we're going to charge you X thousands of dollars, that would have probably been viewed by most of the submitters as a barrier. They want to be selected, and we want to select the best use for the site, the best user, and then we will negotiate.
So one of the other barriers we had heard was the ADA and bathroom requirements, which we were addressing. At the same time, there was restaurants that talked about wanting to make other improvements to make it more usable as the restaurant, and that was to be part of the discussion, the lease negotiation, as to what the market rate versus what investment they would be, permanent investment they would be making into the structure.
And I just don't see negotiating the lease as a barrier. I mean,
Right.
I think anybody that's looking to go find a building, they know how much they can afford. So I'd want to know what I'm going to be charged. I don't want to waste my time with this one thing,
Yeah.
get selected, and then go negotiate the lease and find out it's gonna be way more than
I was just gonna say, what's the advantage to
I
being
think-
selected
I
and then
think we-
finding out you can't afford it?
Yeah, we need to have that price in there, so everybody looking at it can say, yes, I can afford that, no, I can't, I should.
Again, then, but then how do we, so for instance, when one of the, Carly was just informing that when we went forward with the brewery was one of the people who were looking at the site, based on we had a base rate that we had calculated, and then we had abatement numbers based on the improvements that would have to be made. So basically, if they made the improvements, we would reduce that rate for a period of time. What I'm unclear is, are you asking us to put the RFP out there with a price, regardless of who the user is, regardless of what they're bringing to the table, so that they know they're paying X amount? But what if that user would actually justify a higher rate? I mean,
I think we should be blind to the user. It should be the dollar amount is
Based
the
on
dollar
market
amount.
rate.
And then you could even put in parentheses, negotiable if, improvements are made or something like that, so that they know, if they say, we'll put in a grease trap, that's on them, and then their rent would be lower.
It's up to the council. I mean, if the council wants to, they don't care about the user, they just want a certain dollar amount, then that's what we would
I
submit.
think the problem here is because, I don't know, I'm not speaking for, I think I know what the mayor said because he already said it, but I am in favor of the Everglades Wonder Garden, but I'm not in favor of going for, even in having the staff try to contract with them without our understanding what the potential financial impact would be for the city. We don't know what we could, quote, get, what the going rate, especially, and I'm in favor of doing the renovations. We might as well just do it and get it done. So there needs to be substantial payment from whoever goes in there. But I don't know what the rules are or the conventions are for restaurants. So I think that's the alternative. That's what we thought about. So if we give up on the restaurant, I want to know what we're giving up in regard to money, because that's what we're talking about. I think everybody here is a supporter of the Everglades Wonder Garden. I think it would be a very good project for them. They could expand all the things they said. I buy it, hook, line, and sinker. But it's difficult for me to go ahead with this without understanding what we can ask them. We can't even ask them. When you contract, how are you going to talk to them if we don't understand what the market rate is?
But okay, just if they're selected, the contract with the rates and everything will come back to the council.
Right. But how are you going to go negotiate that? That's what I want to know.
I would suggest that we talk to some local real estate and find out what the current square footage and market rate is, and probably compare it to restaurant as well as educational center use in that location in the downtown, and bring back what current market rates are.
Yeah, no,
We could
I
also
agree. I
work with-
feel that
We
should
could
have
also
been
work
done
with
already. However, it
CBRE as our
wasn't in the
consultant to
RFP.
give us local rates as well.
Yeah.
So if we are gonna vote on this, Derek, am I able to ask them something privately, real quick, in reference to what they submitted? I think it may be a typo, but I don't wanna.
I would say you probably can't ask them privately, but you could ask them
Publicly.
publicly.
Fire away.
Well, I just have concern with one of the attachments. It's the scrutinized company statement.
It's scrutinized what?
Scrutinized company statement. Number 8 is based on information and belief, mark below. There's an X next to scrutinized companies that boycott Israel. But then there's other options below that weren't selected, so I just want to know, as a company, are you guys boycotting Israel, or is this a typo?
No,
Those
that doesn't
are
actually
for over
apply.
$1 million,
That's-
for contracts that are over $1 million.
Yeah, but it's in here, and it's marked, so I'm just wondering.
What page are you on?
It's right after the.
Please come on
it's-
up,
It's
Bob,
right after
sorry.
the W-9.
W9?
Right after the next page after the W-9. It's page 19 of 24.
Hi, I'm Beth Hagan, and again, I'm treasurer of the Wonder Garden, so I helped prepare that document, and we are not boycotting Israel or
Okay. Yeah,
any such
because
thing.
number 8, it's got an X right next to scrutinized companies that boycott Israel list. But
it
then
is-
under that, there's 2 other choices that are not.
It's absolutely a typo, there's no question about it. And our financial statements are up to date each month, prepared by a CPA firm. We have them by the 3rd week of the month following the month, and the current financial statements, I believe, were in that document. And if they weren't, that is an error of omission, because we certainly have current financial statements that reflect a very healthy balance sheet and a cash balance on an ongoing basis of over $300,000, usually up to $500,000 during season, with fixed assets that went from zero a few years ago to approximately $400,000 in fixed assets now. We also have a business manager in place who has worked in a CPA firm, who is doing the financial management that a company with revenues over $1 million really needs. And that revenue point that we reached last year has put us in the category of requiring an audit annually, and our current annual audit is being completed within the next 2 weeks by Stromer and Associates CPA firm. So financial management is something that we feel very strongly about on the board, and we feel that we can easily show a financial wherewithal to pay a fair market value rent for that building. And while I'm mentioning that, a practical note, our configuration of how we would use that building would mean that the ADA and other changes that are being made that you'd be paying money for in advance would be undone and redone by us. So I encourage you not to spend significant money to make changes to the building until you're sure who it is that you're going to put in there. One more comment. I was at each open house, and I did get to chat with the restaurateurs who were there. I can tell you that consistently each one of them backed out because they felt it wasn't a viable building for a restaurant for a number of reasons. Size being one, location and proximity to the curb being a second. It was obvious to all of them that parking is a real issue, and it will always be an issue. It was an issue with the last restaurant as well, as you recall. And the amount of modification that would have to be done to a relatively small building doesn't give the financial return that a restaurant needs to get the number of table turns that they'd have to make money, especially in our seasonal market. So those who came left after speaking with me about how this just didn't make sense for a restaurant. But that's, of course, my feedback to you.
Wonderful, thank you. Fred?
I really appreciate her comments. Derek, would it be permissible that we could we kind of negotiate with Wonder Garden a little bit before we go do anything?
That's one of the
Yeah,
options
all
we
of the,
provided.
yeah, all,
I mean,
any
in other words,
proposal
I'm not talking about us, I'm talking about staff, so they could come back at a next meeting and say, Wonder Gardens is willing to pay this much money per rent, and they're going to take on the needed renovation of the building to do ADA, which is a chunk of money, especially if we
And
do.
fair market value is X.
But that is essentially what their proposal was.
Right, except we don't have the magic number about what are we going to get a month, I believe, right?
Well, so what, that was to be determined if that was the direction.
Well, that's, we could take that step, and then if we don't like what they come back with at the next meeting, then we.
That was
always the
option 2
intent.
on the green sheet.
Excuse me?
That was always the intent.
It's option 2 on the green sheet.
So if we select them and then financials don't come back the way we want it as far as rent-wise, fair market value,
Get it, yeah.
then we
could
just
say
part
no
ways
to
then.
that, correct.
And, yeah.
So we're not going to re-advertise.
Well, it
We
depends.
might. We
Well, there's
may.
been a motion and a second
We
for
might
that.
later, but we-
So, but we can't talk to Wonder Gardens about this? I mean, because if you think about it,
They can talk to them all.
So
the rent for Wonder Gardens should be more than $1.
I can clarify, now that the LOI is closed, and if, should council decide to go into lease negotiations, you all are welcome to have individual conversations with the Wonder Gardens. It's during the closed period of the LOI.
well, let's vote on Laura's proposal, which is to put it to,
Can I ask this question?
Yep.
If her proposal passes, if we all vote for that, now what happens? Can we still negotiate with the Wonder Garden and bring back the, no.
If you
So we got to keep it open to
So
do
we
it.
can't ask any questions on their financials? I mean, this
what
is for
council-
kids, and there's no information in my packet per se, the summary page, about the profit or even the loss that was the summer camps and the kids, and how much interest is it? Is going to be basically a daycare center? Parents drop off their kids and 3 hours later after the experiments and, fun times, or do parents have to stay there? I mean, so what's the dynamic, and how much interest is there per se that we can know we're going to get a return every month?
So if you don't re-advertise and open up the LOI, you can have conversations with,
You can have conversations now.
correct, you can have conversations
No
right
one's,
now.
no one's
between-
preventing anyone from talking anyway.
The closure of the LOI is over. So you can have conversations now with them.
If you have questions now.
So if we re-advertise, we can't talk to them?
Correct.
During the open LOI process, yeah.
Well, I think we should re-advertise so that we then have a better base for a conversation.
But we can't talk to them during the,
Right.
during the bidding
Correct.
and the
But that's,
selection.
we bring it back up in February.
Well, Laura made a motion, and Fred made a second. Council, is there further discussion? Yes, ma'am, please, please. Welcome back, good morning.
Thank you for your consideration. Again, I'm Deborah Brandel, and I'm the Vice President of the Board of the Directors of the Everglades Wonder Gardens. And I have to would ask you if you could make a motion to negotiate a rate with us. Beth admitted that, said that we would be happy to pay a fair market value. Councilwoman Carr, I think we can just let go of the dollar, because that was a different circumstance, a different time, a different negotiation.
So that's fixed, it never changes?
It's a 5-year lease, okay? We are in a different financial position now than we were originally, and I think that when we talked about Irma before, Irma devastated the Wonder Gardens, devastated it. And we did not get 1 penny in insurance to cover any of our costs. So that was all on us. We are financially stable. The restaurant situation did not work out, was very controversial. Parking was an issue, another was an issue, another was an issue. It did not work out. That building is vacant. And if we table this to February, it will be vacant in February. So there is no money coming in.
Last year, the city paid $100,000 to improvements at the Wonder Garden.
That was for the restaurant. It wasn't the Wonder Gardens.
It's on the.
It was the property of the Bonita Springs, of the city. And it's still the property of Bonita Springs. We are proposing to pay a fair market value for that space based on square footage. And I would like to suggest that you make a motion to negotiate with us, and then we move forward. And we're willing to sign documents right now. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, I'll withdraw my motion.
Yes, ma'am, yes.
Clarify.
A strategic plan was written for the development of the Environmental Learning Center at the Everglades Wonder Gardens. It includes external and internal initiatives, both to use the facility as an authentic learning environment for children as well as adults. And it also includes external reach out to secondary and elementary schools in the area, including live cams in habitats that the science teachers at the high schools would like to use in order to provide access to real-world activity as part of their curriculum. There's a large adult education component with this, and it includes, of course, as I mentioned earlier, the Florida Landscaping Expert Certification Program, but also workshops and lectures about environmental issues that are interesting to those people who live here year-round, as well as those who come during the season. We have a very large and well-established summer camp program that is funded by grants and donations. That's a standalone program with a professional curriculum based upon Florida Sunshine Learning Standards. These programs for camps, as well as the Class Kit program, which are kits that are checked out by a homeschooler, parents, and teachers, are developed along the same sunshine standards as well. So we're very much aware that this facility has a tremendous opportunity for learning for children and adults who want authentic learning experiences, especially addressing the issue of the screen issue. I can't think of the name. Nature deficit disorder. That's the term I'm looking for. Children today, of course, are on their screens, and nature deficit disorder is something that is being discussed by many people in environmental education because we're trying to get children back into the environment. So we're in a unique situation with a very well thought out environmental learning center plan that's not just a matter of dropping children off to be babysat. We'd clearly avoid that at all costs because of the legal implications of that. We have a professional staff, a new education director who comes to us with years of experience, especially with animals. We have an excellent president who's here with us today, who's brought the gardens up to incredible standards for beauty and diversity of the botanicals. And we have a business manager who is in charge of making sure that these growth activities that we've engaged in are done according to standard and prudent business practices. So it is, in my opinion, of course, in the best interest of not only the council, but also the community to make better use of that building than just potentially another restaurant that may or may not be successful, and to go with a known entity that can show in audited financial statements that we have improved dramatically in the past 4 years from a zero-based budget, in other words, no budget, to a professionally developed budget that is reviewed each month by the board of directors.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else from the Wonder Gardens like to speak? Okay, Laura, you've made a motion. Do you want to?
I want to stick with my motion, put it out there, and get other possible restaurants to respond.
There's been a motion, and Fred, you seconded that. Is there further discussion, council, on this, or questions, or any answers? Okay, forget the answer part. Roll call, please.
Mayor Simmons?
No.
Councilman Gibson?
No.
Councilman Forbes? No. Councilwoman Carumba?
No.
Councilwoman Carr?
Aye. Sorry.
It's okay.
So yeah, I'll make a motion to accept the Wonder Gardens and enter into negotiations based on market rates.
And a satisfactory negotiation.
Well, yeah, it has to come back to us, but based on market rates.
And I'd like to have an update on the financials that would show that they will be able to pay it, over a longer term, and, I mean, you have to talk.
And that there's interest.
And I'll second that if you bundle into Mike's motion those
Right.
latter points. Is that okay, Mike?
Yeah, I accept.
Package deal?
Package.
All right,
Whatever it is.
package deal.
Third or whatever.
But let's be clear of what it is again, because there's been a couple things added. Let's be clear.
Selecting Wonder Gardens.
Financial viability.
Updated financials. Because they are showing more recent, but I think it's the tax returns were dated 2015, 2016.
That's possible.
But there were other financials in there, but just not the federal returns.
There were other financial information that had to do with their, their funding and their, there are other programmatic financials that I think need to be up to date over a longer period of time, so we know that they have indeed turned it around, which I think they have, but I don't think it's clear from the material we got.
I know somewhere in there I saw net incomes for 2018, but.
And to be clear, we do have the right now, if this passes, for any one of us to go in and
have a
talk to them.
conversation.
Like Amy could go in and look at financials or whatever, or Laura, or whatever.
Okay. There's been a motion by Mike and the second by Fred, I guess. Roll call, please. Or further discussion, council. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilman Gibson.
Aye.
Councilman Forbes.
Aye.
Councilwoman Caramba.
Aye.
Councilwoman Carr.
Aye.
Mayor Simmons.
Aye.
And to be clear,
We came to a
negotiation doesn't mean that they got the contract, it's subject to our approval.
Yeah, right.
Any final contract will come back to city.
Subject to our approval. All right, Tom and gang, thanks for being here. Thank you very much.
Can we have a,
Yes, I'll tell you what, we have mayor and council reports now, and then public comment, and then we're gonna take a 15 or 20-minute break or whatever we're gonna, yeah. Thanks for being here this morning. Okay, Mayor and, Amy.
I'm gonna just mention what I've been doing, but not what I did. I had a very good meeting with Citrus Park where I think 200 people showed up, which was surprising. A lot of interest on our development with the mine, interest in all kinds of water quality and water management processes. Very active community. It was kind of a fun time. I also went to the Horizon Council meeting, which I do every month, and nothing really new to support there, but they are focusing on transportation, affordable housing, and again, water quality. Everybody has that on their agenda. And I just want to wish you, well, if this were the end of the meeting, I'd say Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. But I think we have a few more meetings to go. I can say it again, and that's all I'm saying.
Great, thank you. Laura?
Merry Christmas, happy holidays.
Okay, thank you. Mike?
Good for right now.
Good for right now. Fred?
Yeah, I've got two things, but let me go to the simpler one first. I was up at the Tallahassee, Florida League of Cities, and we were talking to the various, most of they were our district members, not totally. And there's 2 or 3 things that are going on up there. I'm just going to lightly touch on it. I'm going to give you a copy of what their summary of these different bills are. One bill is on affordable housing and accessory housing. Affordable housing, they're saying any place in the city, if it passes, that we have zoned residential is eligible, and we cannot prevent affordable housing from going in there. The thing that is the more disturbing is that they've also got a bill where they're talking about letting people build accessory rental housing on their property. And they've got a, I think they're
You mean
saying.
like put a pod in the backyard?
I'm saying they literally, they could take a garage and convert it into rental apartment for the vacation people. And the 30% of the gross house can be added on. So that's something, that if it passes. Then also they're hot on getting money for all the cities through one of the universities to help us fortify ourselves from cyber hacking, ransoming, and it's, you know, hell, Pensacola's been ransomed, so that could happen, and it's big money. Now, jumping off of that, I want to mention, at the last meeting, I think it was, we were talking about the old 41, the comp plan, and also the modifying our code to do the form-based code. And I made the point, I think Jay was the one that was saying it could be handled, that on density, we need to come up with something where if somebody's building studios, he said, oh yeah, we can credit a studio apartment of say 600 feet with, like that's 4/10 of a, that table needs to be done so that the next time that thing comes up, it's not we could, but we have something to look at. Secondly, I made the admission that I screwed up myself, along with, I think, the whole council, where we went with a number of floors, and even with the number of floors, they had a maximum height. But we also had another option where it said maximum height of the building, and I said, look, you need to let, if, once the height is developed, and we have different heights in different zones of Old 41, so it's not one height. And I don't even care if you want to say, even if you're in a zone that allows the maximum height, if you only have a narrow lot, it's got to be a lower height. But we need to adopt number of allowing it to be height, not number of floors. Because here and there, you may be able to get an extra floor, and it may be to the benefit. I don't think we want to limit, and we went down a rabbit hole with good intentions, and if I had more time, I would give you more facts on it, but I think we at least need to look at that option again when we look at this table for it. So I'm just asking. Thank you. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year's, and I want to say that we've got a great, wonderful staff that's really doing wonderful things for us. And we're in a unique position. We don't have enough money to get all the money people want to give us to us.
Right.
Unless we're like the feds, then we can print it.
Yeah, then you can print money, right?
Print money, yeah.
That'd be nice.
Yeah. No, thanks. And I touched on this just a little bit earlier, but I want hats off to Matt and our entire team, on our nitrogen reduction program here in town. And because of scheduling and holidays, I'd hoped to be able to talk about this a little bit more, but I just want to let you know that we're in the process of scheduling some meetings to have further discussions with state leaders on our program, I guess as a model, if you will, and hopefully we'll have some good news on that in the new year or during this legislative cycle. I also want to applaud this council, and I've said it before, you've heard me say it, disagreement always, always, always gets us to a better product and a better place. So we'll go back on this FGCU proposal and have the discussions that we need to have. And like I said, we continue to be leaders and not followers, so I do appreciate your thoughts. We'll go back and sharpen the pencil on this proposal and look forward to bringing it up in the new year, as well as obviously this nitrogen reduction discussions that we're having with some state leaders at this time. We have a lot where we're going to get into a budget meeting here later on. We are going to take a break, but it's been, every year you say this, but it's honestly been a pleasure to work with this council and staff. We are a family. We're not twins. We're not even cousins, but we are a family. How's that sound? And I love working with each and every one of you. Comrades. I've got a brother, a mother, a father, a wife, and 2 children. We're family, and we don't always agree. And an uncle, but we are family, and an Uncle Fred. But honestly, from the bottom of my heart, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year, and looking forward to next year as well. So thank you very much with that. And with that, we're going to open up public comment, and then we're going to take a 15 or 20-minute break, whatever council's pleasure is. Yes, and then minutes to approve. Welcome.
Good morning. Very briefly, I think you made the right decision on the Everglades Wonder Gardens. I appreciate that. Amy and Fred, when you sit back, you're sometimes hard to hear. So ask you to be, and staff, a lot of times you're very hard to hear. So thank you very much. Happy holidays.
Great. Thank you very much. Thanks for being here. Other members of the public that would like to speak? Welcome.
Yes, for the record. I just want to mention now, I've already publicly apologized to everyone on the board, withdraw my support for a restaurant. I don't want to get this started again. But I stick my foot in my mouth occasionally, as you all know.
Welcome to the club.
But I want to pull it out. I did not know what their plans were. I didn't educate myself, and I just knew that, gee, there was a nice restaurant there long ago, and it would be nice to be there. So anyway, I just want the record to show that I withdraw my support to have a restaurant. I want what's best for the city and Wonder Gardens. And again, happy holidays. See ya. And that's right, there's no meeting the beginning of next year because of Holly. Enjoy. Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much. Other members of the public that would like to speak? Arlene, it's not here, but do we have any minutes to approve?
Not at this time, no.
No minutes to approve? Motion to adjourn?
Great.
We are adjourned. I'll tell you what, it's 11:30.
Mayor, it's only a break, not an adjournment.
You're doing.
Yeah, we're taking a break.
It's a continuation.
Motion to take a break until noon. How's that? And a second? Okay, we'll see everybody at noon. Thank you.